Okay, the hour of 6 has arrived. I'll call to order the Beal Early Childhood Center Building Committee meeting for Tuesday, June 4th, 2019 at 6 p.m. in the Old Selectman's office. First item is to review and approve the meeting minutes of May 14th, 2019. Motion has been made to accept. Do we have a second? All those in favor shall signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll skip to item 4, 5, and 6 because 3 of our members are in a dinner break in negotiations. Item 4, to review and vote to authorize the 60% construction document supplemental submission to the MSBA, inclusive of the 60% CD reconciled estimates. Mr. Mizikar, would you like to kick this one off? Or?
Sure. I did have some questions that I had forwarded to the OPM and were answered, but I'll just highlight that I had some questions relative to the scope, the size of the demo that were listed seemingly differently, but ultimately the same between the CM firm and the designer's estimator. So I am satisfied with those documents at this point.
Great.
And look forward to submission to the MSBA.
Any other questions on item 4?
I did have one question.
Please, Patrick.
Just with respect to the submission, I know that there's it looked like a routine or required part of value engineering recommendations. Is that in fact a requirement of MSBA as part of this process, and what's the owner's engagement with those recommendations?
Absolutely. So we had a brief discussion before we headed over here. The MSBA's requirement for that is to speak to it if value management is required. At this point, the project is trending on budget, slightly under, at the 72.9, the 73.4 million for the 2 estimates as compared to the 74.1. So at this time, there is no value management requirement to get us to the 74.1. So the MSBA doesn't require a vote of the building committee. What PMA, LPA, and Fontaine have done is kind of started putting together a list of scope items for review with the appropriate stakeholders from the community of Shrewsbury. That includes all different branches of stakeholders. And we'd like to review it with them prior to, so that they're comfortable with what would be on the table at that point in time. And then after review with them, would like to bring it to you, possibly for the next building committee meeting. Again, they're not required. They're just items for your viewing, and if a motion were to be acted on them, that's up to the building committee. But again, no requirement unless you're trending over budget and need to get back down to budget.
So if when we reach 90% and we get those cost estimates, and we're hypothetically, if we were over, then we'd have to.
There would be a requirement, correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Further questions, item 4? Not seeing any. Relative to the cost estimates, none of it, in essence, I guess, we're just under the project budget at this point with the 2 estimates, correct?
Correct.
Is there any particular element that you folks are more concerned about than another element as a weak spot to watch as we go forward?
I think at our estimate reconciliation, there was a big discussion about, or not a big discussion, but a discussion about the prices of steel.
Yep. Yeah, so there's, in terms of level of detail, quantification, unit prices at the current market rates, we feel very confident about the level of detail in our estimate as well as in the independent estimate. We did, I believe we decreased the escalation a little bit at this stage, but not as much as we generally would from the DD to the 60. And the biggest thing that we are on the lookout for is any effects of the, there's been a tariff enacted on China, additional 15%, which affects a lot of the subcomponents of a lot of electrical equipment. So we don't know exactly the effect of that. And then there's also discussions between the kind of NAFTA partner type countries about specifically Canadian steel fabricators, which are people who supply most of the market. So those are the two areas that we see the biggest risk, but I think we've tried to account for that in the estimate.
I think we actually increased slightly during the reconciliation
Yeah,
on the escalation to account for that potential issue. So that is reflected in those numbers right now. So there's a little bit of safety in there for the uncertainty that we're seeing.
So the concern from day one remains, any unforeseen impacts of trade issues.
correct.
No contingencies have been touched in any of this. Those are still at the same levels that we took them to town meeting, et cetera, right? Okay, great. If there is no, do you need action on 4? So we'll vote to authorize?
Yes.
Okay. Could I have a motion to vote to authorize the 60% construction document supplemental submission to the MSBA, inclusive of the 60% CD reconcile estimates?
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor shall signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have passed. Item 5, review and vote to authorize the town manager to execute an amendment to Fontaine Brothers, Inc., pre-construction contract for early bid package 1 EPB 1. The scope of EPB 1 is abatement and demolition of all existing buildings and project work. Mr. Manager?
So, as the committee will recall, when we entered into the agreement with Fontaine Brothers, it was just for the CM fee for the design phase of the project, and as we progress into each different phase of construction, we'll amend that agreement based on the cost estimates and scope of work that's at hand at the time. So this is an authorization, and I would have the OPM kindly detail any other nuances that may help inform the committee.
Absolutely. So in conjunction with the reviewed reconciled estimates, and in order to start the project and maintain that schedule that we've been working towards, which is the demolition and abatement site work, followed by the road reconstruction, we need the early bid package in order for the work to progress in the summer. Fontaine's received bids from demolition and abatement site contracts, I believe 4 or 5 of them.
Demo guys?
Yep.
Yeah, I believe 5.
Yep. And 4 site work contractors. PMA, LPA, Fontaine have reviewed those bids and worked through with Fontaine leveling them. Dave, I'll kind of let you.
Sure. Yeah, so we received the bids in, and then we go through the bids in detail to make sure that, everybody's basically looking at the project in the same way, has the appropriate quantities, unit prices, spec sections, everything like that. And then we met with this group with PMA and LPA and Fontaine in detail with 2 of the site contractors who were very close cost-wise, and the abatement demolition contractor, who was the apparent low bidder. Went through in detail the scopes of each of those folks, had them adjust some things in terms of anything that came up during the scope that they needed to update for us. And so now what we're going to be in the process of doing is we'll basically prepare a formal amendment, right, which will be, here's the scopes of the work, here's the exact costs, here's everything else that goes into that amendment, which will be the contract mechanism that the town will execute to say, okay, let's release those contractors and Fontaine staffing and get on site and start the work. So, what the motion would be for the committee is basically when town manager and PMA and LPA and everybody says, okay, we're good with all this paperwork, then the town manager would have the ability to sign and authorize that.
Great. Questions? Comments? Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, so signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And Kevin, when that time is reached, I'd appreciate it if you would offer to members of the committee who might like to review that package, the opportunity to do so, just so that we can see how it's fully fleshed out, as Mr. Fontaine has mentioned.
Absolutely.
Item 6, review and vote to authorize the town manager to execute amendments to LPAA's contract. Amendment number 006, complete additional soil testing at the Wheelabrator site to accept project soils. Amendment total $7,270. B, amendment 007, NTE value for building abatement, construction, administrative services, $79,640. Soils construction administrative services, $11,000 for an amendment total of $90,640. Any questions?
I will just add, if I may, that these are within our budgeted estimates for the project, so they may be amendments to the contract, but are within the budget.
Thank you very much. This does bring up an interesting point, Mr. Fontaine, relative to the Wheelabrator site and the naturally occurring arsenic and how that gets managed. You're comfortable as you work toward your demo mitigation and site guys that they have sufficient experience working in and around the DEP environment?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was one of the most important things in consideration, specifically of the site work package. Obviously, it's important to maintain the kind of working relationship, the confidence of DEP and the agreement that they've set up with us. So, you know, in terms of the testing parameters, reporting parameters and stuff like that, we're comfortable with the site contractors, experienced and competent in doing so.
Great, thank you very much. Further questions, if not a motion on item 6?
So moved.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve. All those in favor shall signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Item 6 is unanimous. Well, that's, if you guys need to run, we understand. Item 3, review on the act of the following bill schedules and warrants. Graves Engineering, Inc., if I could say it, invoice 34857, $636.50. And Fontaine Brothers Incorporated, requisition number 4, $26,053. Questions? If not, do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve. All those in favor shall signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, we're unanimous. Item 7, we'll hear the reports and review and act on the following matters. The report from the owner's project manager regarding schedule and financials. Good evening.
Okay, you have handouts for the schedule this time. We just gave you an excerpt from the OPM schedule, just pages 3 and 4, because everything is basically as it was when we met on the 15th of May, 14th of May. We just actualized some things, the 60% CD submission less the estimate, and then reconciled estimates. But otherwise, the project is on this schedule, and it remains as it was last month.
Great, thank you. Questions? No questions on that, Deb?
Okay, and then the financials, if you look at the budget summary, again, the contract totals are the same. Encumbered to date, as it did last time, includes the cost of the land and these invoices. Or encumbered to date includes the contracts that we have plus this Graves invoice. The invoices to date don't include LPA and PMA's May invoices because we don't have them yet, because we had this early meeting, so we don't have them, but we do have Fontaine's May invoice, and then everything that we know that you guys have encumbered to date,
Great.
or, been invoiced for. But down at the bottom, you'll see that,
There's 2 more.
the ProPay submitted amount to date is substantially up because we were able to do a ProPay submission, last month, because we haven't been able to for a while. So, ProPay submission number 14 was for 3.6 million and change. 2.7 of it was eligible. The chunk that wasn't was the 915 for the land, and 932 for some mailing. So what's happening is, right now you go into ProPay, your reimbursement rate has been upped from your feasibility agreement, which was 50.16, to your project funding agreement with all the incentive points to 54.86. So what happens is the 2.7 of eligible cost in ProPay 14 is going to be reimbursed at the 45.86%. And what we envisioned, because what the policy is of the MSBA, is that you get that 54.86 on all your previous ProPays. So the delta there between the 50.16, which everything from 1 to 13 has been reimbursed to, and the 54.86 is about $50,000. So it's 1.482 and change reimbursement on 14 plus the 50,000. That gets you to the pending ProPay payment of $1,532,773.
Well, thank you. Any other questions for Deb? She's on a roll. Everything ties up. Okay. That's fantastic. 7B, report from the architect.
Good evening. So, as you know, we've moved into the 90% construction document phase. We're continuing coordination with our mechanical engineering, plumbing, fire suppression engineers. What also coming forth is we are targeting an early steel and concrete package, similar to the early site package. So we're similar fashion, just like with this early site package, we are gonna make documents available to Fontaine to put on the street for bidding. Beginning of August, they'll have a bid period for roughly 3 weeks. They'll get hard bid numbers, and those will be rolled into the 90% estimate. But in order to meet that early bid package for the structural steel and concrete required by building code is a structural peer review. And that structural peer review is, the services are being procured by PMA. That will be happening between July 5th and the end of July. And they'll review it for any comments and just make sure it's up to code as far as calculations and design goes. And that's kind of where we're at, and we're continuing to move forward. We have had some other meetings with stakeholders on hardware and security in the meantime. We have some other meetings scheduled as for, FF&E, other technology going into the building, but we're really kind of getting down to the really nuts and bolts of the project at this point, as a lot of the big picture stuff is in place. So that's about all we have to report on.
Well, thank you very
I'd
much.
just like to add to what Sean said, the structural peer review is going to be funded from the reimbursables in PMA's amendment number 1 to our contract for the rest of the project from DD through closeout, but we had a $10,000 reimbursable amount in there, so that's where that's gonna come from. And just one other note, we have on the street an RFP for third-party testing, construction testing, soil compaction and sieve testing and rebar testing, all of the standard construction testing, and that we'll need to get that in place. We're hoping to have something to bring to you folks, bring the amendment to you ahead of the July meeting, and then have you approve that amendment, so, because we're gonna need that guy out there when these guys get out there to start,
Absolutely.
do
Sure.
soil testing and stuff. So that's on the street, and we should have that for you guys next month. And that, again, that's funding that's already in the PFA budget. It's just not encumbered yet, per se,
Now, do we
per
need to,
contract value.
but we don't need to vote on the structural, do we?
Well, I don't know that you do, because you approved our amendment and you gave us a
Yeah.
$10,000 reimbursement.
Then why do we have to vote on the other matter, or did I misunderstand what you just said?
On the
It-
third party.
On the third party, we don't, that's gonna be a chunk of change. That's gonna be, $90 to $150,000.
Understand.
So that's gonna be an additional amendment to PMA's contract.
Very good. And if something happens so that we can keep things rolling and you need a special meeting, just give us time to review the documents
Yep.
and then coordinate with Kevin and Val, and we'll see what we need to do.
Okay, very good.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else from the architect? You're square. Report from the construction manager.
Yeah, so just behind the scenes, we've been working with the town, with the Celco and Verizon, just trying to get all the legwork done on putting me in a position to tear the buildings down once we get to that point. That's really where we're at, working with Patty to get the building permits lined up, health department, so I know exactly what they want, so when the time comes, I can just say go. So that's where we're at.
Great, and relative to that, I think you were in the room, we had asked Mr. Fontaine to mark the trees that will be kept.
Yep.
There's a variety of signature trees that I know we all want to keep as part of the project, so
Okay.
if we could do that sooner than later, that would,
Okay.
I think, abate some worries that people have when they hear demo and site work. Thank you. Any questions? No? Correspondence. An email dated May 7th, 2019 from Brian Moss of 16 Ruth Ann Circle regarding a request for a presentation on wireless technology. I've asked the manager to spearhead an internal review of the gentleman's issues so we can get a sense as to whether they apply or don't apply to the building. And upon the receiving the manager's report, we will take the next steps. Item 9 is to set the date for the next meeting. Val, where are we? Are we back on the traditional? So it's the second Tuesday of July, if I recall. The 9th-ish?
Ninth, I think it's July.
Is it the 9th-ish?
Yes.
Okay. 9th-ish work for folks? And do you think you'll need a meeting before then, or do we think the 9th will work for the testing operation? You don't need an answer right now, but just keep it in mind.
Okay, absolutely.
Okay.
We'll get back to you within a week
Okay.
Okay.
about if we need a meeting.
Yeah, very good. Okay. it seems, and then are we on for the second Tuesday in August as well, folks? We're back on the cycle?
Let's check with these guys.
Sean, or do we need to submit it?
We'll hold the date for now.
Yeah.
With the bids for the early steel package and seeing the sequencing with that,
Yep.
we definitely wouldn't shift it forward. If anything, it would bump out 1 week, but we
Okay.
will have that answer for you at the July meeting.
I think we have posted as part of our selectmen's meeting on that second Tuesday is for an update.
Mhm.
So either which way folks could plan to be here,
In August.
August,
Yep.
yes. Okay, great. If there is nothing else,
Supposed to be.
is there a motion to adjourn? Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor, so signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you all very much.
We've got to send it.